been here for over a year now. Very lovely country. And it's been an interesting journey up until this point, and I'm even more excited not on the journey but what is to come. A bit about the journey, which is, I believe, part of the initial premise of the question. So, from the name, you can tell that before the baptism, I was Nigerian, but very much African. Grew up in the continent, in a very dynamic environment where we are laced with different kind of challenges, but more importantly, the opportunities that this challenge presented. So, as a person, the whole journey and how Schneider came into the picture much later on was driven by what can we do to be able to address some of the day-to-day challenges that we see. And one glaring one for me at that time was energy access. So with the vibrance of the country at that time, still is very dynamic, we're very entrepreneurial, you know. We want to get things done, try to see how much we can do to grow. And coming from the same kind of family where I had a dad, struggled but tried to make ends meet, worked hard, built a business with which he was able to train all of us. I was always marveled by the idea of if we had other fundamental infrastructure in place while my dad was going through all of this, it would definitely increase overall for the likes of my dad a lot of productivity. And one infrastructure gap that was evident out of them was, of course, the energy gap. The power outage was very frequent going up, regular outages. And this drove me, of course, into engineering. Studied engineering. Most of my graduates and undergrad were in Europe. Later I moved to France where I did my graduate studies. And with that passion was opportunity to be working in R&D, where I was actually developing products and solutions that we are very much aimed at addressing this kind of needs. So part of my early project was building microgrid solutions, wireless EV chargers, technologies that were able to provide access to energy for those that otherwise may not have had access. So after playing with this for some time, I was so eager to see how to take this from lab to site. And that point of playing with the lab, playing with the product was also where my interaction with Schneider started. Because I joined the group in France and was building this. And very quickly going back with the first opportunity I got to my home country, which was Nigeria, which is Nigeria, was to see how to make this happen. So coming back, looked around, yes, I knew there was this product. This was over a decade ago that's worked because I've played with it. But how come there wasn't mass adoption in the market? How come people were not using it? These were the obvious questions. I knew it wasn't about the product or the solution because it worked. So we had to ask myself, okay, what can we do differently to make this happen? And these were the early stages of trying to think differently, go about deploying this with a different business model in a way that makes sense. What was very common when I moved back to Nigeria was people doing many of these solar projects from a CSR perspective. So they will go deploy one solution somewhere, and you don't see a lot of ownership. So ultimately, it felt like it wasn't fully utilized. Anyway, to keep it short, what we did, identified some startup companies, so some young guys again straight out of school, eager to make a difference, eager to get this solution off the ground, eager to at least provide electricity access in their own communities as well. We came together, we supported them with the technical support, the know-how, went, identified communities, more than 6 of them at that time across the country, that were very far from the grid. So very far from any electrical wire that you could see coming from the main national grid. And we built a small solution. So with barely 24 kilowatts, we provided power to more than 200 homes. And looked closely at the business model, which meant with prepaid meters installed and the debt that was used to finance this project, because we were able to raise money from the bank, it was deployed and it was working. Why? Because these communities had activities ongoing. They were productive. You had communities that were remote, but these communities had agro-processing happening in their communities, whether it was fishery, they had some trade, different things. So by being able to fuel this productivity, we saw them fully harness the power that came from this alternative energy to even increase their output, and of course be able to pay back the use of electricity that they were consuming to these young startup companies that we worked together to get this started, to pay back their debt. Now here is where it gets more interesting. This was early stage pilot, which was proving the idea that this solution could be a tool for powering productivity in very far communities. And it got so much attention because it defied most of the classic common sense, as you would call it. Why am I using the word common sense? Why? Because today, most banks would prefer to give money to someone in the city somewhere with a track record, as opposed to trying to use the same cash for somebody somewhere in a village. First, common sense. Second, common sense. The tariff. Most of the time, the tariff that was being charged in a given place, dollar per kilowatt hour, that was being deployed in this place was very different. So it was a solution that was financed through loan, quite frankly. So it had to be cost reflective in order to make more money to pay back the loan, at least for the investors and the startup companies. And this was part of the initial design. So a dollar per kilowatt hour at that time, grid to grid, it was more expensive. Why? Because the national grid was subsidized, whereas this was cost reflective. But the intent here was to make it economically affordable for the off-taker, which are the people in these communities. So here again, we tapped into our expertise as Schneider, which is to be the best one, to be most optimized in providing an end user with the most efficient solution, making sure that they can do a lot more with less. So with this, we are end-to-end so energy efficient that a typical household at the end of the month was paying a price that was 2 times cheaper than those in the city. Whereas these people had 24 hours and those in the city still had daily power outage. So when you look at the total cost of ownership, of course, it's way cheaper for what they have done compared to someone in the city. The solution was working because it was affordable enough for those in the community. The investors, the startup companies were making enough money to pay back the debt. And with this new realization of what was otherwise not a common sense, came new business opportunities, came real opportunities. Because with this, you had the banks coming, the government coming into the equation to support, to see how to make this at scale. Many of these companies were now becoming very attractive, that they were able to raise more money to be able to scale this across the country. Even World Bank came in to invest in those initiatives. And at that time, with different stakeholders, we are coming together to see how to again rewrite national policy to enable rural electrification. Of course, at Schneider, all of this was made possible because we were also very passionate as a group, not just in words or in the press, but keen on energy access, powering, providing energy to those that are disadvantaged in the population. So it's something that we have been pushing hard on at the forefront. So being able to navigate internal country expectation and plan and meeting a real need out there was very crucial. My personal vision maybe before I answer this, I want to complete the story to where I am today.
Yes.
Because that would make it easy to connect the dots to the vision I have, at least for Schneider today in East Africa. So for me, not long after this sprint in Nigeria, doing different things, I also moved to East Asia. So I spent time in East Asia, in Vietnam, Cambodia. Again, trying to work closely with the team to see how we can develop the new energy business. In renewable energy, in smart grid, but even more interestingly, in e-mobility. So I work closely with the team. We're able to get these businesses off the ground, and our operation in Vietnam is quite huge. The team have gone very far on different aspects. But this was also a very exciting domain, both for the group, for the country at large. And it was also very exciting for me, being able to learn the culture, get exposed to the things that makes the East Asian, the Vietnamese, the entrepreneurship tick as well. I'm trying to connect the dots to the similarities that draws us together in Africa. And getting many of this off the ground was exciting, including helping the country set up some training centers in schools and so on. Today I find myself in a very beautiful country, Kenya, here in East Africa, working closely with a very vibrant team to see how to grow the business. Also here with the family as well, loving the country. But what I even admire a lot about the country is the potential as well. We're at a place where it's bustling with the youths. I mean, we've seen how with the Gen Zs, they're able to hold the government to account. So this is a lot of interesting dynamics. I mean, it's not unique to Kenya, by the way, it's across Africa. And one of the things that we see is that Africa is actually the next frontier already. In the next 10 years, 1 in 3 people within the workforce will be African. In 25 years, 1 in 4 in the whole world will be African. So the next billion growth is coming out of this continent. And what does this mean for my view and vision here? One is, how can we ensure that we put this technology in the hands of the people here to be productive and extremely innovative? Why? Because when we understand the potential that this solution has, we can push innovation, productivity to a new level. And I'll give you 2 specific examples. When I was in Vietnam is one of the few countries also that has very high electrification rates, almost 99%. So almost everywhere is very electrified. Electricity is cheap and so on. So there's a good electrification coverage. There's a lot of industry. Yet, they needed somebody with my expertise to see how to help them even embrace renewable energy solution. Why? Because it will help them to reduce their carbon footprint, be more energy efficient, and to keep meeting up with the sustainability quota. Whereas, in my home country, it was a mix of 2 things. So we are very proud of Schneider because, again, just last month, we are named by Times Magazine as well. And we are named again just last month as the #1 most sustainable company in the whole world. It's a very recognition that is also something we are very proud of. It's a huge recognition and something that we are very proud of. And it comes back to how we've really embraced the whole idea, and not just idea, but even our operations, sustainability as a whole. And you see this across everything, both from our technologies, our products, where we ensure that we build the best in class, provide the best in class product that helps you to optimize and reduce your carbon footprint with what you do. And also how we use in our own day-to-day operation, and of course on the people. And the people side has been something that we again have been extremely passionate about, whether it's on gender and inclusion. This is something that we are proud of. For me, for example, 60% of the leadership team here in East Africa is actually biased to female. So we have more female than male here in East Africa, leading the team, leading our operation. And beyond, of course, the usual topic around gender and so on, it's also just from the stories I've shared, our commitment and intentional, consistent efforts towards addressing the social topics around us. From something as basic as working with a school to train the teachers, train the students, help them to access best-in-class technology, to be better skilled to address the workforce, to making sure that our product is not just being used for those in the city or for industries, but also relevant for those in rural communities that may not have access. And so many other things I could go on for. You remember the story I shared at the beginning of this journey?
Yes.
Some of those communities are very remote.
Yes.
And I'll give you an example. One of those communities, it was so remote that you have to go 2 to 3 hours on earth road to assess where they were. And yet we were intentional enough to make sure that we were able to reach them. But to answer you directly, it's simple. We are very aware that we need to work in partnerships. So very intentional about it. So trying to find the right partners to collaborate together, to leverage each other's strengths and make sure that ultimately the beneficiary of what is required, whether it's a solution for a rural community, can access it in a way that is affordable. Or an industry here in the city can again enjoy the solution to make their production extremely efficient, increase their yield, increase their profitability, and be able to, of course, employ more people in the process. The first obvious one will be the end users, the customers.
Yes.
So whether it's the industrial manufacturing, whether it's the telecom sites, data centers, the building, real estates, all of these guys. One of the first things that we try to do is to be here, in country, very local, in all the countries that we work, to engage with them, to understand where their pain points are, and to see how to keep ensuring that our innovation is not just addressing their needs of today, but of tomorrow. The second part, of course, is those that we call system integrators. Because sometimes you need to bring different products to address a specific need.
Yes.
A factory may need the process line that is automated, electrical supply from the grid, the equipment upstream to protect it, and so many other stuff. The software to manage the operations, to make sure that the supply chain side of the factory is working well with those on ground, the production team, the marketing team, the HR team. All of this orchestration with the software is also something that we do. And these different aspects of what a factory needs requires different expertise. And some of those expertise are embodied with a persona that we call a system integrator. So one of the things that we are trying to do is to identify companies that have this profile, support them to get to a certain level where they can think through this and deliver what you as a factory owner needs to keep your factory up and running. We also have those that we call a panel builder, and these are the that assemble this electrical panel up to 6,000 amps, fully type tested here in country. When we say type test, it means that this panel are designed to withstand certain conditions under standard testing conditions as well. So meeting all the IEC standards, not just being put together without the right thinking behind. And we are working hard to localize these panels here in country, and we are already doing it. So we have a number of them here in country that we have trained and certified to be able to assemble these panels here in Kenya at the right global international standard. And with this solution, they are able to supply it to many global multinational companies that have factories there, but also the indigenous local companies. And why is this critical?
Yes.
Because that's where safety is fully addressed. We've seen the stats. It's so common to have fire outbreak in many buildings here today. What we've also seen is that a number of those outbreaks is caused by poor electrical installation.
Yes.
So when you elevate the quality standards at the onset, making sure that the electrical equipment that is delivered in those buildings, in those facilities, are of the right standard, international standard that are well enforced, fully complying, then you drastically minimize the likelihood of those fire outbreaks.
Oh.
I think it's a good point because government is what I see as an enabler.
Yes.
And I want to just ride on the last point I made, enforcing standards.
Yes.
This is crucial. Safety is our number one priority, and it needs to, it's our internal culture, and it needs to be the same at government level. We need the government to keep driving the maximum standard, the quality standard, because this elevates the input-output within the country to be globally competitive, remain globally attractive,
yes,
and to keep that advantage across the world. And if you look at it, most advanced countries, their enforcement of quality standards is very high.
Yes.
When you start to not enforce, because some may have it but don't uphold it, then you end up creating unnecessary room for fake, substandard, which again has ripple effects. Because when a fire outbreak occurs, whether it's a community somewhere in the village, somebody gets injured, goes to the hospital, that person is a burden already to the healthcare system that could have been avoided. So it helps to, on one side, remove and avoid unnecessary expense. So that when they design to go into a house, they are infusing the best practice, because they're often the first point of call for a homeowner.
Yes.
Making sure that they're upholding the quality, reviewing what needs to be done, deploying not just the basic installation but even smart home technologies there. So the partners that are going to be assembling this product, these solutions in country, doing it in a way that is fully digital ready, such that when it gets to site, we can actually listen to the equipment, because our product already has the ability to speak. They can tell you when there is a fault and guide you on where to identify the fault and even predict a fault before it happens.
Yes.
So making sure that we have a partner that can be able to build a solution that not just enables it to speak, but listen and understand what it's saying, which is where the digital layer comes, and that's the mastery level.
Yes.
To the industries that use our solution to be able to infuse and harness the full digital capability of what we do. So my vision and plan here in East Africa is one, spread this expertise across the region. All the key countries, or in fact actually all the countries, need to have local partners that are able to understand this mastery of what needs to be done. We work with them to understand their needs and help them get them more empowered to address the day-to-day need. And here as a country as well, ensure that our team is ahead of the curve, literally, to be able to address our customers' future requirements.